All right, fifth grade. Well, we're getting here into chapter 7, and the first set of directions say find the quotient. I want to make sure you understand that when we're talking about the quotient, we're talking about the answer to a division problem. So we've got a lot of division signs going on here. Well, first of all, when we divide by base 10 numbers, all we're doing is moving the decimal because we know that 87 divided by 1 is 87. And so when I got these base 10 numbers, all I'm actually doing is moving the decimal to the left to make the number get smaller, because these are whole numbers. And I move the decimal to the left how many ever zeros there are in the number. So if I'm going to think, well, 87, and it says I'm going to divide by 10, which means I'm going to move the decimal one place to the left. So remember that the decimal in 87 will actually go there, all right? I'm going to move it one place to the left. I'm going to end up with 8 7/10. It's not hard. Same with this one, 93 divided by 10. If I want to start with 93, I'm dividing it by 10, so I'm going to move the decimal one place to the left. It's going to go right there. 93 divided by 10 equals 9 3/10. So now I'm going on with dividing by 100. 456 divided by 100. Well, if I have 456, this is a base 10 number. Remember, base 10 numbers are numbers that start with the digit 1, and then they're just followed by zeros. So 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1 million, and so on. Those are all base 10 numbers. So all I'm going to be doing is moving the decimal two places to the left now, because there's two zeros in 100. So if my decimal is there and I'm going to move it twice to the left, once, twice, my decimal goes right there. I end up with 4 56/100. If I go to this one, 4,823 divided by 100, same thing, 4,823. My decimal would go right there. There's two zeros in 100, so it's telling me I'm going to move it once, twice. My decimal goes right there. I get 48 23/100. My final answer is 48 23/100. Well, so far so good. It's not a very good 8 there. So far so good. 5/10 divided by 10 to the power of 2. All right, well, we want to remember, first of all, what 10 to the power of 2 is. That is a 1 with two zeros after it. So I'm going to put a 1 with two zeros, so it's dividing by 100. All right, so I'm going to end up with 5/10 divided by 100, which means I'm taking the decimal in 5/10 and I'm moving it two places to the left. Well, there's already a decimal in 5/10, so I'm now taking it once, twice. My decimal goes there. I've got these empty spots. I need to fill those empty spots with zeros. So I actually end up with 5,000ths. All right, 2 53/100 divided by 10 to the power of 3. Well, remember that 10 to the power of 3 is a 1 with three zeros after it. 10 times 10 times 10. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. I add my three zeros. 2 53/100 divided by 10 to the power of 3. All right, if I have 2 53/100 and I move that decimal once, twice, 3 times to the left, I fill those empty spots in with zeros, I end up with decimal 0.00253, or 253/100,000ths, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, 100,000ths. All right, 5 6/10 divided by 0.1. Now this is 1/10. Now I have numbers less than 1. Now that when I'm dividing by numbers less than 1, that means that this number is actually going to get bigger. So when I divide this by 1/10, there is one digit after the decimal, which means I'm going to move the decimal one place to the right. We'll write a couple of rules down in your notes, but when I'm dividing by numbers that are less than 1, this number is actually going to get bigger. So there's one number after the decimal, so I'm actually in 5.6 going to move it one place to the right because there's one digit after the decimal. And I'm actually going to end up with 56. And we'll talk a little bit about the rule of why that works a little bit later on in this chapter. 2 8/10 divided by 100. Well, once again, this is a number less than 1. It's 0 and something. And so there's 2 digits that come after the decimal in my number. So I'm going to, since this is less than 1, the decimal is going to be moving to the right once, twice. I'm going to fill that empty spot with a 0. I end up with 280. All right, let's move right along. Let's talk about the second part here. The second part tells me to find the value of x. Well, 83 7/10 divided by x equals 837. So I'm starting here and I'm ending here. So I can see that my decimal moved one place to the right. So I'm thinking, well, what would I divide by to end up moving it one place to the right? Well, since it moved to the right, that tells me that I divided by a number that is less than 1, and there must only be one digit that comes after the decimal because I only moved it one spot to get it to be 837. So that tells me that x equals 0 and 1/10. 323 divided by x equals 32,300. Well, once again, if I've got this 323 and I added these 2 zeros, that's where my decimal is. The only way I was going to add 2 zeros is by moving that decimal 2 places to the right, which means once again I'm dividing by a number that is less than 1, which means that I'm moving it to the right, and since I moved it to the right twice, there must be 2 digits that comes after the decimal in my answer. X equals 100th. X divided by 100th equals 47. Well, remember when I divide by something that's less than 1, like I am here, once again it's 0 and 100th, my decimal is moving to the right. My decimal ended up right here. That's where I ended up. And there's 2 digits that come after the decimal here. So that tells me that I moved it 2 places to the right, which means if I ended it up here and I moved it 2 places to the right, if I backtrack 2 places to the left, this is where I must have actually started. X equals 0 and 47 hundredths. All right, moving right along, x divided by 10 to the power of 3 equals 0 and 47 hundredths. Well, we know that 10 to the power of 3 is 100, or 1,000, a 1 with 3 zeros after it. Now this is bigger than 1, so I moved this number 3 places to the left. So if I move the decimal 3 places to the left, because this is bigger than 1, and I ended up here, I'm going to be backtracking by going right and moving it 3 places. Well, I've got one empty spot there, and that means that it's 470. So that tells me that x equals 470. Now I have this one, 92 divided by x equals 9.2. Well, I can see that 92, my decimal would go here. I ended up moving it to the left 1 place because it ended up here to make it 9 2/10. Well, since I moved it to the left, it must be a number that's bigger than 1. And since I'm just moving the decimal, I'm dividing it by a base 10 number. Well, the base 10 number that has 1 0, because how many times we move it to the left is determined by how many zeros there are, is 10. 10 is the base 10 number that only has 1 0. So that tells me that x equals 10. This is the last one. 82 1/10 divided by x equals 821 thousandths. Well, I started here, and I ended up with my decimal here, so it looks like I moved it once, twice to the left. Well, I'm dividing by a base 10 number. What base 10 number would cause me to move my decimal 2 places to the left? Well, it must be the base 10 number that has 2 zeros, because it's the number of zeros that tell me how many places I move that. That tells me that x equals 100. All right, talk to you later, 5th graders. Bye.